All right. All right, you guys, I am so excited about this. I have my model here, Marcia, and today we're going to be demoing what I consider one of my signature looks. I love to attract the client and the bride who really wants to get fresh, perfected, not overdone skin, but the focus is on the eye. She's giving lots of glam, lots of lash. And so I've done this look before with Marcia, and you guys went crazy for it. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how to achieve this look, okay? Now, I do want to caution you just one more time. Please ask your questions in the chat box. I won't be able to hop in there and answer them, but I'll be as thorough as possible as I'm going through the demo. So, and afterwards, if you continue to have questions, I'll hop back in and answer any questions that you may have. So, without further ado, look at her giving you a side by side. I love it. So, I'm going to hop right into the routine. So, first things first, we're going to go through skin prep, okay? So my skin prep routine is actually very simple. I don't like to do too much. I love to use foundations that are rock solid and, you know, give me the coverage that I need. So I don't want to add too much product to the skin. So going through skin prep, the very first thing that I do is I will typically spray my client with a toner spray. So let me give you a couple spritz here. And my favorite are Caudalie Elixir, Beauty Elixir. I love that stuff because it smells amazing. It's very calming and soothing to the skin, and it's just a beautiful product. But if you don't have that, a really good alternative is MAC Fix Plus, and that's what we use today. So after I hit my client with a little toner spray, I'll go in with a moisturizer. So I love moisturizers that are quite thick and emollient. So the moisturizer that I'm using today is Kiehl's. That's K-I-E-H-L-S, Creme d'Elegance. So C-R-E-M-E-D' E-L-E-G-A-N-C-E. So if someone would just hop into the chat and spell that out, it's Kiehl's Creme d'Elegance. And the reason why I specifically love this moisturizer as opposed to something like a Embryolisse is that this has much more emollients to it. And I love, you guys will find that I love using creams. And when I'm using creams, the benefit of having a creamy texture on top of a moisturizer that's nice and emollient is that that cream is going to blend and move over the surface of the skin. So having a cream moisturizer that's a bit more emollient really helps with the blending and bringing the foundation colors together. So that's why I choose something that is a little bit more rich and creamy. Embryolisse is fine, but it does, it absorbs into the skin, which is great. But for this purpose, I want something that leaves a little bit of sheen to the surface of the skin. So as I'm applying this, I'm paying special attention to those areas that tend to get a little bit more dry and chapped. And typically, I'm going to just turn your head to the side. Typically, that happens right on the side of the nose. I'm sure you've noticed your clients having lots of kind of texture and dryness there. And also right under the eye. So have your client look up and really give her lots of moisture right under that eye. And you want to really go there if you have a client. I'm going to turn you this way. If you have a client who's mature and you know, has some wrinkles under there, really give her lots of moisture. If you guys have ever found that your clients are getting creasy under the eye, or you know, there's just a lot of texture there, it starts here. You want to start to address that right at the skin prep step. So giving moisture there really hydrates that area. And I'm sure you guys are asking, what do you do if your client has oily skin? What do you do? So my technique really doesn't change. I'm going to say this over and over again, but I love to keep it super simple. So I've created a routine that works for everyone. So whether my client is dry, whether she's oily, whether she's combination or normal, I pretty much give her the same thing. Now, the only difference is this next step, which is if my client is oily, which I'll ask during skin prep, tell me about your skin. Are you oily? Are you dry? Are you combination? 9 times out of 10, she's going to say she's oily. So I will hit her with just a bit of mattifying primer right in the T-zone area. Do you guys have any guesses about what my favorite mattifying primer is? You guys are gonna laugh, but I love just regular old milk of magnesia, and I know that's kind of controversial. But you have to remember, like, when a client is getting her makeup done, it's a special occasion. And I'm very clear that milk of magnesia, you shouldn't use it daily, but it really does do a great job of absorbing the oil and making the skin matte. So for a special occasion, once in a while, I think it's okay to use milk of magnesia. But if you do want alternatives, I love Becca. They have a great mattifying primer. If you guys have Boots number 7 at your Target, they have a really, really good mattifying primer as well. And actually, it mimics to me the kind of the texture and the finish that milk of magnesia gives to the skin. So those are 2 really good alternatives. But as I'm applying this to the T-zone, I am not giving her so much that it leaves that white cast on the skin. I'm literally using just enough to absorb the oil that we just laid down with the milk of magnesia. I'm sorry, with the moisturizer. So during the skin prep phase, I do like to give my client just a bit of hydration to the lips as well. So any lip balm will do. I'm actually using Lucas Paw, which is pretty much like petroleum jelly. It's a little bit different, but it has a very similar consistency to like a petroleum jelly. So you just want to give your client's lips a little bit of moisture right now, so when you do the lips later, it's ready for that lipstick or that lip gloss, and she's not chapped, and you know, you're not getting dragging across the lips. So I do that now. And then my final step of skin prep is I address my client's brows. And this is a step that I've noticed that many makeup artists skip, and it's so important that you not skip it because it really does make a difference in your final product. There's nothing like a look that from top to bottom is clean and refined, and few things throw a look off faster than brows that aren't groomed and, you know, fresh and looking nice. So Marcia has great brows. I really don't have to do much, but what I am going to do is I brush my client's brows upward, because my signature is like a brushed up brow. So to get it there, I brush the brows upward, and then if I need to tweeze, I will. So I'll clean up the the underbrow area, and if the client has extra brows on top, I'll clean that up. And then once that's clean and I have my shape, I'll go in and just trim the brows that are extending past her shape. So these little scissors that I carry are super cute. They are called, and I'll show them to you in 1 second as soon as I finish this, but they are called Twizzlers. I think they're called Twizzlers. And I got them from Muse Beauty Pro, I think. So super cute, and they're so convenient because you can just trim just like that. And then I use them for my lashes as well. So get you some Twizzlers in your kit. So that's pretty much it for my skin prep. Again, I keep it super simple because the action is in the coverage and the foundation. So this gives me what I need to create a beautiful canvas. So I am ready for foundation, and I I want to share with you, and this is super exclusive. I've never shared this, online before, and I really only share this when I do like one-on-one lessons or when I'm going deep with my artists. So I have a 3-step system that helps me to shade match my client every single time. So you guys are going to learn that today. So, and I developed this system because I'm a systems person. I love having systems by which I can do my makeup and have it be consistent and, get the consistent results that I want. And when I first started doing makeup, I learned, like many of you, from YouTube University. So I was doing the makeup that I saw on YouTube on my clients, and I was getting super inconsistent results. So sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. And I just could not figure out why it wasn't working sometimes. So in my head, I was like, okay, well, how can I make a system that actually works every single time? What I was finding was that the face would be great, like the face would be snatched. But when I stepped back and looked at the face versus the body, it wasn't, it was a floating head situation. And so I really wanted to step my game up and have this makeup be consistent from top to bottom, the face matching the décolleté, the décolleté, and the shoulders and the arms, and everything just looked beautiful. So this is what I came up with. When you are working with women of color, we all know that very rarely is a woman of color one thing consistently throughout her face and body. She has multiple different tones, and our job as makeup artists is to address all the tones that are present. So when I'm working with a client, I'm not only looking at her face, I'm looking at her chest, I'm looking at her arms, I'm looking everywhere to see what's really going on here. So I noticed through trial and error and having lots of clients in my chair and failing lots of times that most women will have 3 different things going on in their skin. They'll have an all over color, which is what I consider like if you were to take all of the tones that are in her body and mix them up in a blender and get the average of everything, that's what I would consider an all over tone. She then has an undertone, and typically when you look at someone's chest, when you look at the center of her face, you can see the undertone coming through. So our Marcia, her undertone is kind of golden, like a golden beige. For me, I'm very golden undertone. You may have a pinky beige undertone. So your client will have an all over tone and an undertone. And the third tone that she'll have, and this is kind of the game changer, she will have an overtone. And I consider the overtone the warmth that typically happens around the perimeter of her body. So she'll be warm at the forehead, she'll be warm on her shoulders and her arms. And so I look at that and I try to get a sense of what is that tone, what's coming through. And so here's where the system comes in place. I will first do a wash of her all over color all over her face. I will highlight with her undertone, right? So if she feels very yellow or golden, I'll choose a foundation to put in the center of her face that feels very yellow and golden. And if she has a warm overtone that feels very red or very kind of orangey, I will contour with that overtone. So she's getting that warmth around the perimeter of her face. So that 3-part system is how I address all the tones that are present in my client's body. So I know that was a lot. I know you probably have tons of questions. I wanted to give you the overview first, and now we'll put it into practice, okay? So let's deal with her all over color. So I keep my foundations in a little view set palette. Y'all, I'm clumsy, so and Marcia's trying to come in with the save. But view set palette, I use cream foundation. So these are a mix of black opals. These are a mix of a couple Anastasia. I use AJ Crimson, and I use William Tuttle. So I have all of my foundations in a kit like this. This is it, you guys. This is my foundation. So I think this has like 24, 26 wells. So that's it. So as I'm looking for the foundation color, I will literally hold it up to my client's face, just like this. And the beautiful thing about this view set is I can see the full range of colors that are available to me. So I'm literally just looking and seeing what's the best match, what will get me the closest to her all over shade. And so I'm going to be somewhere kind of in here for Marcia. So I just take a bit of that, and I mix a couple things. I'm not afraid to just get creative, mix a couple shades. That'll get me close. So I have my palette, and I'll show you guys what this looks like. And then what I also do is I'm not afraid to swatch a bit of this just to see what that gets me. And I'd say that that's pretty close. That's a pretty good match for her all over shade. So I'm happy with that. I think I'll rock with that. Yeah. So if I don't get it right on the first try, I just add whatever I feel like would adjust it. So if I need to add a little bit more peachy beige or a little bit more of a golden tone, like whatever I need to add to that, I'll just, get a bit more from my palette and add it to my little mix. So I like to apply my foundation with Alcone sponges. That's A-L-C-O-N-E. And I love Alcone sponges in particular because they're very, very thick, and I feel like they do a beautiful job of laying down an opaque layer of foundation without having to work too hard. Also, I feel like these sponges blend for me, so I can move very quickly through my application. So I'm going to turn Marcia just a little bit toward you guys. And I love to start my application at the jawline, because this is my opportunity to check, like, is this right? Do I need to adjust it a bit? And I may actually, now that I'm seeing her in the light, I may actually add just a little bit more lightness to this, just to bring this color up just a little bit. And so I do sweep this down the neck. I'm going to turn you back towards me just a little. And as I'm applying foundation to my client's face, I'm giving her coverage where she needs it. So as we're working with creams, the beautiful thing is you get to customize your client's coverage. You don't have to give her full coverage everywhere. So if you find that your client has beautiful skin, like Marcia does, you don't have to always go there. You can keep it fresh. And then if you find that she has dark spots or needs extra coverage in certain areas, all you'll do is go back in and build up the coverage just where she needs it. I know a lot of you may be weary or leery of using creams because it can be heavy, but it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to be. You can customize it and build it up according to your taste and according to what your client actually needs. I'm going to turn you towards me just a little. Okay, great. So this is Marcia's all over color. I did bring it just a little bit under the eye, but she doesn't need a ton of coverage there yet. We are gonna go in there with the highlight color and give her coverage. So I'm just keeping it light under the eye. Awesome. Now I'm gonna go in with a beauty blender, which I absolutely love. I don't use beauty blenders as application tools. I use them as a finishing product. So now that my coverage is on, I'm gonna go in and refine the texture of this foundation and make it more skin-like by bouncing the beauty blender on the skin. So this step helps to make that foundation look a little bit more like skin and less like foundation sitting on top of the skin. This is her all over color. And now we are ready to highlight. So remember earlier, I said that I love to highlight with my client's undertone. And if you look at Marcia's chest, you'll see that she has lots of like a soft golden tone that's kind of emanating from her chest. And so I want to bring that up to the center of her face. So as I'm looking at what's available to me in my handy dandy palette, that was so cheesy. As I'm looking at what's available in my palette, I'm looking in this top row. And the color that's kind of speaking to me is, let me pick up my spatula so you guys can see where I'm pointing. This color is kind of speaking to me because I feel like this particular shade has the same feeling of what's kind of going on in her chest. I hope you guys can see that. So I'm gonna be right in here. And I don't have my palette labeled. I love to keep my palette clean, but just based upon what I know, this looks like Black Opal Rich Caramel. So picking up a little bit of that Black Opal Rich Caramel, and getting it onto my palette, I'm gonna pick up a fresh Alcone sponge. And I am going to highlight under her eyes. So I want you guys to see this part. So Antoine, you can actually pull back in because I want this to be right close up on her face. So when I'm ready to highlight under my client's eye, I do not place this color right at the lash line. Don't do that. And the reason is because when you put so much product right under the eye, think about it. Your client is blinking, she's moving, she's being expressive. She's gonna wrinkle up and she's gonna get creasing under the eye. So when I place my foundation under the eye, I like to give myself about a ½ inch of space. So right there is where I first place my tool. And one thing that I want you guys to know is wherever you land your tool first, that's where the most concentration of your product will be. So I want to concentrate my color right here, and then I will eventually build up to the lash line. But for now, I know that I want the most coverage and the most product right in here, right in the hollow of the eye. And most clients will have a hollow right in here. So I kind of use that as a landmark on the face. So I'm building this up right here. And I want to share with you guys another trick and another system that I developed, because I'm all about doing things the same way pretty much every time. So, and I love to have kind of landmarks on my client's face that help me to get the results that I want consistently. So, looking at your client's face, what I like to do when I highlight is I like to have my client, can you smile for me? Yay! And I use the top of her cheekbone as my guide. So I do not bring that highlight any further than the top of her cheekbone. So that serves as my landmark. Like I don't bring highlight all the way out to the hairline. I think that that looks very unnatural. And for me, I like to keep my looks very natural, very true to my client. And so I found that that gives me the most natural result. So that's where I am with that. And for me, light is one of the most important things that you can have in your kit. So I love to have my light right in front of me, focused right on my client's face, and that allows me to see where that light is hitting on my client. So my client's face will tell me where to highlight and where to contour, where to shade. And so the light is telling me that there's a high point here, and everything outside of that is drop off, right? So everything outside of that can be shaded away. She's not gonna be highlighted out here. That's just not the way light works. So I keep my highlight right in the center of the face. And then I start to build down. I love to give a little pop of light right above the lip. It's not a full block of color above the lip, because I see y'all doing that and it drives me crazy. But I'm just giving a soft whisper of this highlight tone above the lip. And she's getting a little bit of this on the side of the nose, just a little. And the beautiful thing about these sponges is, again, it really does the blending for you. So I really only have to do just a little bit of refining here to bring everything together. So that's it. I mean, I just love these alcone sponges. They're great. They give you lots of control, precision, and you really don't have to work too hard to get it right. So I'm popping just a little bit of that highlight onto the chin. And then I'm gonna move on to the forehead. And you guessed it, I have a system for the forehead as well. And actually I learned this trick from my favorite guy, Rennie Vasquez. So I land my sponge right in the center of the forehead. And I'm concentrating my color there. I blend out and up. Now you may be asking, well, how far out and how far up should I bring this highlight? Well, what I've learned is that you want to look at your client's brows and build that highlight from high point of the brow to high point of the brow. So that's how wide we go. And then in terms of how high we bring that highlight, I'm gonna turn your face that way. Yes, most clients, and I hope you guys can see this, most clients will have a slope of the forehead, okay? So it'll slope down, it'll hit like a high point, and then slope down. And so I bring that highlight up to the high point of her forehead. So turn back. So my highlight will stop right around here, because that's where her forehead slopes off, and then you don't have a big forehead, girl, but no, that's where her client slopes off. If your client has a flat forehead, which many women do, you just kind of have to eyeball it. And the way that I eyeball it, and this is another trick that Rennie taught me, is when you're highlighting, really what you're trying to do is create an oval in the center of your client's face. Why an oval? Because the oval is the ideal face shape. And when you're highlighting, what are we doing? We're pulling attention forward. And so when we highlight in the center of our client's face, we're drawing attention to that oval shape first. So what the eye is seeing is that beautiful oval. So as I'm highlighting, you guys can probably see it coming through. It creates a beautiful oval. And that's why I don't pull my highlight all the way out here. That falls outside the oval, right? So if your client does have a flat forehead and she doesn't have a slope that you can use as a guide, just imagine a perfect oval in the center of her face and think about where the high point of that would be, and that's how far you'll bring your highlight up. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, so I'm just refining this forehead. I'm getting my oval together. Great. And then the final step of the highlighting is probably my favorite part, which is down the center of the nose. And so I land my sponge here and I give her highlight right down the center. Now, if you have good light that's positioned right in front of you, the light will naturally hit right down the center of your client's nose. Use that as a guide. I do not bring my highlight past the tip of her nose. Why? Because light naturally does not hit down here. And so I'm not gonna highlight down there unless I'm doing something very specific, like, I don't know, maybe I wanna make her nose look a little bit longer or something like that. But right now, her nose is great. So I don't need to do any magic or any tricks like that. So I'm gonna stop right at the high point, or right at the tip of her nose. And I'm not sure if you guys are seeing what I'm seeing, but there's actually like a hot spot happening right there because the light is shining right on her face. And so I'm using that as a guide. I'm stopping right where that light tells me to stop. And speaking of lighting, because I keep mentioning it, and I'm really a light snob. So the lighting that I love is by Lowell. That's Lowell. And I actually carry two of their lights. So I carry the TOTA, which is TOTA. And when I teach, I love teaching under the Lowell Pro. And the difference between the two is the Lowell Pro is more of a spotlight, so it shines that light right on my client's face, whereas the Lowell TOTA is more of a floodlight. And I love the Lowell lights specifically because they are tungsten, meaning they're warm lights, and I personally love doing women of color in warm light. So those are the lights that I prefer to carry. So right now I'm using the Pro. So I'm just using my Beauty Blender to soften the edges. I still haven't yet brought this highlight color up to the eye, the lash line. So there's still that gap there. I'm still waiting for it. And I'm just going to soften this nose highlight just a bit. With my Beauty Blender. And I do that by just bouncing it right along the nose there. Okay, so looking at this, I personally think this is perfectly beautiful. And all we've done is all over color and highlight. Just know that as the artist, you can make choices. You don't have to do everything. Like if you wanted to just set this and go, or if you have a client that's like, I want to look really, really natural, I just want something really, really soft, you could totally stop here, but we're not. We're gonna contour her up. So the final step is to contour. And I love contouring with products that aren't as full coverage as the Black Opal. So my contouring creams of choice are either AJ Crimson or William Tuttle. And I specifically love those two because they are sheer. They are emollient. It's almost like painting with watercolor. And when I'm contouring, and I actually don't like calling it contouring because I feel like it's more shading, more burning. But when I'm contouring, I am not doing it for coverage. I'm simply bringing warmth back into her skin tone. So that's why I don't like doing the contouring phase with a black opal, because it's coverage. You know, that black opal goes hard. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of one of these guys on the bottom row, which these are what I use to contour with. And I like something that's right in here. I'll probably go for this one. Right in here. Maybe mix in a little bit of the darkest. So and again, it's not labeled. I should have labeled my foundations right before the class, but that particular color is comparable to AJ Crimson, either 7 or 7.5. So just as a reference, and I added in a little bit of William Tuttle Ebony, which is comparable to AJ Crimson, I believe number 11, whatever his darkest shade is. So I think it's 11. So just a mix of the two. And I'm using this, I think this is the first brush that I've picked up. So this is the MAC 153. It's a small stippling brush. And this is my favorite thing to contour with. And I love this brush specifically because it blends for me. I mean, it really makes it easy to move product and blend it very quickly. So I start at my client's hairline and I get all in the edges. I can't stand when you can see like her actual skin tone peeking through the edges. So I'm pretty generous with this color, and I really work it right at the hairline. I'm not worrying about blending it down yet. All I'm doing at this phase, I'm gonna turn your face All I'm doing at this phase is getting my contour color right at the hairline. And I pretty much, when I'm doing this normally, I'll go from ear to ear at this point. But since I've already done half the face, I'm just gonna go from ear to the top of her forehead. Okay? So I feel like I have a pretty good amount of product there. And so I'm not gonna pick up any more. And what I'm gonna do is start to build this down towards my highlight. And as I'm building down, I'm using very light pressure, just the tips of my brush. And what this does, and let me go back. I'm sampling from the foundation that I laid down at the hairline. So I'm picking up a bit of the pigment here and just very lightly bringing it down. I'm gonna turn you center. Building it down towards my highlight. And so by using the very tips of my brush, very light pressure, what's actually happening is it's almost building a third blended tone right on the surface of the skin. So light pressure here. Very softly. So she has a beautiful warmth right at the hairline, and then I'm starting to fade and diffuse down. So this is how you get that beautiful, transition without the harsh edges. Pay attention to the pressure that you're using as you blend. When I want to lay down my color, I'm using pretty good pressure. And then when I'm ready to blend, I lighten my pressure. And that's across the board, regardless of whatever tool I'm using. When I'm laying down, pretty generous pressure. And when I blend, lighter pressure. All right, that's a beautiful forehead. And notice that the oval that was in the center of her face, it's still living, it's still there, right? So I just built that contour down towards the highlight. Now I'm ready to contour her cheeks and the side of her face. So, same brush, I'm gonna turn you just slightly, yep. And now I'm gonna start building in and incorporating that warmth right along the side of her face. And then I'm gonna have you smile. And I like to work that right around my client's smile. So you'll notice that I use my client's face and her features as landmarks to where I build and place things. It's all about creating something that's so specific to your client, whoever's sitting in your seat. Great, can you guys see that? So now she has this beautiful warmth that's wrapping from her forehead right along her smile and her cheekbones. And I'm gonna build a bit of that down and onto her jawline. So this warmth is kind of living around the edges of her face, and it's all coming together and looking really, really natural. The way that I like to paint is I want my client to look like she has beautiful skin. Not that her foundation looks amazing, but that she looks amazing. And I'm just using the very tips of my brush to refine the edges and tap away any harsh lines. Gorgeous. This is looking really good. Okay, so my next step and my final step of the cream foundation phase is to contour the side of the nose. And I'm looking for my brush. This is what, the second brush that I picked up? So I actually like to use a fluffy blender brush to lay down the contour of my client's nose. So one of these guys. This is just a little cheapy $2 brush that I picked up, little goat hair. So I pick up that same contour color on the tips of this brush, really diffuse it. And I run that right on the sides of my client's nose. And I like to start right in, like, bridging the gap between the nose and the eye. One, because I want to kind of diffuse some of that foundation. I find when I go straight to the side of the nose, sometimes I have too much foundation on my brush. And so, you know, this is a really small area, and so you don't really want to make mistakes here. So I kind of start here just to make sure that I have the right amount of product. But also I really love shading away this area. So start right in here, right in the socket, and then build down. So it's not, you know, hard lines. I really don't like working with hard lines. I like working very soft and diffused. And I'm gonna go back in and blend this even more. And the way that I soften this nose contour is I go in with my beauty blender. I pick up just the tiniest bit of my highlight color on that sponge. And I start under the eye, and I build this highlight color right on top of the nose contour. So what ends up happening is your contour will live underneath that layer of highlight that you just built on top of it. So it's gonna look like it's emanating from within instead of sitting right on top of the nose. And so for me, that's what creates the most natural, convincing nose contours, when it's kind of sitting underneath something. I don't like when that contour is really obvious and hard down the center of the nose. So that's my system. And then I go back in and soften the highlight by bouncing my Beauty Blender on top of that. Now, if you find that you've gone too far, if you've over blended it, you can always go back in with your sponges. Like you can take your highlight sponge and then run it down the center of the nose and reinforce that highlight, and then go back and forth blending and placing color. But I'm happy with this. So that's my cream. So I'm ready to set. And before I set, there's one more thing that I need to do. And many of you may have seen this before. You may have seen Sam Fine do this, and this is where I learned this from. So before I set my foundation, I take the Kleenex and I split it into two. And watch it take me like 5 minutes to do this just because y'all are watching. Okay, I got it. So split it into two plies, so you have two thin plies of tissue, and you'll take one ply, and we're gonna use that single ply to blot the face, okay? And when you're working with creams, you have to remember, we use the heavy emollient moisturizer, and then we use Black Opal, which is by itself very emollient. And so we have to address that. So what we're gonna do at this phase is pull off some of that extra emollients and some of that extra product that's sitting on the skin, because we don't need all of this. And especially if your client has oily skin, you wanna pull off some of that oil and address it so that she feels comfortable and her foundation lasts longer. So what we do is we lay this ply right on the face. And essentially you're gonna use this as a blotting sheet. So I just tap it right onto the skin, and it pulls off the excess oil, the excess product, and it almost leaves like a stain on the skin. So if you've ever applied your lipstick and then blotted it and applied it again, and now you have a lip stain, it's kind of the same concept. And so I like to concentrate this blotting right in the, kind of in the T-zone, right? So right by the side of the nose, because I know that's where a lot of clients get oily. It's just like, yes, right in here, because again, we don't want too much product right into the eye. The forehead is definitely a hot spot. So I'm gonna blot off that forehead right above the brows. But for me, I'm gonna blot the brows too. I hate a wet brow, so I do. So I address it here. But for me, I like to leave kind of the hairline a little bit more wet. I just think that looks really, really pretty to have a little bit of like radiance there. So I'm just gonna tissue blot this skin. The key is you want this to look dry, okay? Before you set it, you want it to look dry, especially under the eye. So actually, what I'm gonna do, because I'm gonna be ready to set this in a second, now I'm ready to build that leftover foundation up to the lash line. So I'm just using my Beauty Blender to take whatever's kind of left over and build it up. Now, if you have a client that is pretty dark there, has some significant dark spots under the eye, before you tissue blot, what you can do is take some concealer. I like MAC, what is this? Pro Conceal. I have the Pro Conceal palette. So you can take a little bit of that. Again, I love creams, and you can pat just a little bit of that right in those dark areas before you tissue blot, okay? You can do a little color correction. I'm not huge on color correctors. I feel like I can get what I need from my foundations, but if you love to color correct, you can certainly do that. But address all of that before you go in and blot, okay? So I just wanted to show you what that would look like. And then you'd go in there and look up with your eyes. And then you'll blot. And I'm gonna go right in the side of the nose. And it took me, let me tell you guys, this is not the kind of thing that you try one time and you get it perfect on the first try. Like, it really takes trial and error to get the blotting right, because you have to learn the amount of pressure that you need and how your hand works. So if you've tried this before and it hasn't worked, try it again. Keep trying, play around with the pressure. I promise you, you will get it. If you find that you pull off too much product, totally okay. The beautiful thing about working with creams is you can always blend it and add and move things around until you lock it down. So if you pull off too much, take your sponge, replace the product, patch it up, and then keep it moving. So I'm pretty happy with this. This looks nice and dry and ready to set. Okay, you want to especially make sure that that under eye area is dry. If you see any wetness there, if it's too wet, go ahead and blot it again. That helps to avoid the creasing. So now that I'm ready to set, I'm going to pull out my powders. And if you guys have been following me for a while, you know I love my YSL powders. They're bae. And so the YSL powder that I'm going to use today is number 3. I carry 2, 3, and 4 in my kit for my fair clients. I use number 3 for my medium tone clients, to some dark. I can get some dark with the number 3. And then I use number 4 for my deep clients. They all have a different kind of undertone to them. Number 3 has a beautiful golden undertone. So if you're new to YSL powders, start with number 3 if you work with mostly women of color. I feel like number 3 covers the widest spectrum of skin tones. So I'm actually not going to go in with exclusively YSL. I now mix a bit of YSL with a bit of Dermablend translucent powder. So what I do is I pick up my brush, which right now I'm using Wayne Goss brush number 2. So I think this is like the 3rd brush that I've used, okay? So I don't use a ton of brushes in my application. So this is Wayne Goss brush number 2. I'm going to tap into my YSL number 3. Then I'm going to, with my powder on the brush, tap into a bit of my Dermablend. So now I have a mix of Dermablend and YSL on my brush. I'm going to take one of those lids, whatever, I have the YSL lid, mix them all together. Okay, and I'm knocking off a good amount of that powder off of my brush. So I have just a bit of powder on my brush and I'm ready to set. So before I go in with my powder, I'm gonna have my client look up, blend out any creases. If your client naturally is very creasy or textured under the eye, what you're gonna do is have her go like this, do this. Yeah, so it stretches that under eye area, okay? I know it looks crazy, but it really helps. You don't have to do it, you're great. But have her stretch out that area so that you're not, you don't have any creases before you set it. You're not setting creases. So Marcia, she doesn't have any of that, so she doesn't have to do that. But if she did, that's how you would address that. So I have my powder, it's ready. Look up, and I just go right in there with my mix of YSL and Dermablend. When you're powdering, and this is a mistake that I find that a lot of artists are making, you have to really look at the area that you're powdering and make sure that it's dry. If you see any wetness coming through, you have to keep going there. Keep powdering it and tapping your brush onto that area until it is dry. It is not locked down until it's dry. It will keep moving around because this is cream until it is dry. So pay attention to the area that you're setting and really set it. I also bring this on the side of the nose, this mix. Sorry, you have a little brush hair. Okay. And I'm only using this YSL mix on the areas that I highlighted. And that's because the YSL is kind of a luminous powder. It has a bit of almost shimmer to it if you look at it. And I did a bit of research on it, and it actually has mother of pearl kind of ground into it. So it brightens. And I only want that brightening to be in the center of the face. So I use the YSL blend on the center of the face. So under the eyes, forehead for sure, chin, because we do want a little pop on the chin. And then everywhere else, I set with straight translucent powder, so no YSL mixed in. So I'm ready for that step right now. I'm gonna pick up just a regular old fluffy brush. So one of these guys. This is actually a Hakuhodo B002. So I'm just gonna pick up a big fluffy brush with Dermablend and set the rest of her face. And I'm going to turn you just a little bit that way. Yep, perfect. I'm not going to set this too hard. I do want the skin to look a little fresh and luminous, so I'm not going to over powder, but just enough to kind of lock it down. And I like to keep tapping my brush on the surface of the skin until I can't see like a powdered texture. I want this to start looking like skin, fresh, dewy. And so I continue to refine the texture until I'm happy with it. And I find that by tapping the brush on the surface of the skin in this way, it gives me what I need. Awesome. So now that the face is completely set, I'm going to turn you back center. Now I'm ready to use pressed powders. And I forgot to note this before. I do not set my skin with pressed powder. I set with loose powder. And the reason that I set with loose powder is because I want to set the skin with the finest powder possible. I want those particles to be as fine as possible. And I find that pressed powders, because of the binding agents that are used to press the powder into, your compact into press form, it creates you can just see it too much, and I don't like that. So I only set with loose translucent powders, but I do use tons of pressed powders in my kit. So I use them for tone, I use them to adjust, I don't use them to set. So right now, I'm gonna pick up my first pressed powder, and I'm gonna use it around the perimeter of the face to reinforce the warmth that I brought in with the creams, right? So this phase, you may have heard it as we're gonna burn the hairline. So what I'm using is Fashion Fair. This is Fashion Fair Sable. And I'm using another Hakuhodo brush. You guys, I'm turning into a total, a total brush snob. So I do use Hakuhodos. I do, my brushes are my investment pieces. I became a believer. When I first started out, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. I use the $2 brushes. But when I got my hands on a good quality brush, I can't go back. But the beautiful thing is that for the most part, Hakuhodo brushes are actually quite affordable. You can get the J collection, which is their basic collection. And you can get fluffy, eye brushes like these guys. Like these guys. You can get detailer brushes. You can get your flat, eye brushes, like all the smaller detail brushes for like 14 bucks, the same price as a MAC brush. So they're actually affordable. Now these guys, the bigger, fluffier, you know, face brushes, this is when it gets expensive, but everything else you can get for a pretty affordable price. So don't be scared to invest in Hakuhodo brushes. They really do apply powder in a really beautiful way. When you talk about having tools that really work for you and with you, they're so worth it, and you'll have them for years. So I've probably had this brush for about 1.5 years now, and it looks like new. So great investment. So I'm working that sable powder right along her hairline, just bouncing it, and then have her smile. So smile one more time, and then work it right along the cheek. So essentially what we're doing is we're repeating the cream step with powder, okay? So all that warmth that we incorporated with your cream, we're gonna do the same thing, but this time with powder. And I love Sable from Fashion Fair for this. She gets lots of play in my kit. If you have a client that's like medium skin tone, I love Cola. So I carry Cola, Sable, and then I carry the entire Iman pressed powder collection. So there are 6, I believe 6 shades in that collection. So I carry all 6 of those. And then I do carry a Ket Set pressed, and I use this for on-the-go touch-ups. So that's pretty much, oh, and I have one more. So one more that's deeper than Sable, and that one is, what is this, Shea Moisture Melindy Sable. So that's one step deeper than Sable. And those are my press powders. So I have a pretty sizable collection of press powders that I use, and I use them all, okay? I don't carry anything in my kit that I don't use. So she's got that beautiful warmth right around the perimeter of the face. And now I'm gonna go in and reinforce my highlighted areas. So for that, I'm gonna work with my Iman powders. So I've picked up, what is this? Iman, I think medium sand, and unfortunately the labels have rubbed off. So 2 Iman pressed powders, can you guys see that? They're comparable in color to her highlight, okay? And I'm feeling like I'm probably gonna use this lower one. So I'm gonna go into that. Not picking up a ton of product, just enough to kind of tone and reinforce that area. And I'm just tapping a bit of that pressed powder under the eye, chin, and forehead. And this is that same Wayne Goss number 2 brush. Okay. And now I'm gonna go in with another Iman powder. I think this is Earth Dark. And I'm just gonna work that kind of just to bridge the gap between the highlight and the contour. So I'm just lightly working this around the edges between the highlight and the contour, just to kind of soften things and tone. Sometimes I find that the tonality around the jawline is a little bit off and I need to adjust it. So I'll use my powders to adjust that area, whether it's, you know, it may be feeling a little too olive. So I'll incorporate a little warmth there to get it right. So I'll do that at this step. Beautiful. And then the one area that I didn't reinforce was the nose contour. And so I'm not picking up any more powder, but just what's left over on my Hakuhodo brush. And I'm just gonna spread the bristles and just run it very lightly down the sides of the nose to just reinforce that contour that we laid down. Just very lightly, it's nothing crazy. So now my skin is officially done. You guys see how I go in on skin. I probably spend the most time on skin because for me, that element is the most important. So you guys are probably wondering, how long do I take on my client's face when I'm doing a makeup application? I will give myself 90 minutes. And so I'm not afraid to take my time with my clients. And what I'll do is I'll just gauge her expectations when she books me. I'll say, you know, expect to spend 90 minutes with me for a makeup application. If I need to get it done in 60 or 45, I can. I'll have to take away some of the bells and whistles, but she'll still get a very beautiful makeup application, and I'm still gonna spend a good amount of time on the skin. The beautiful thing is she doesn't need much after this. Like, I could throw a brow on her, throw a lash on, and she's good to go. So that's why I love starting with the skin, because once you get that skin perfected, everything else is truly a bell and a whistle. So that's where I am with that. So now I like to do the brows next. And what I'm doing at this point is I'm brushing her brows up again. Just getting the shape going. And I do brows in 2 steps. First, I start with a shade that's a bit softer and lighter than her hair. And then I'll go in with something that's the color of her hair, maybe even a little bit deeper, and I'll create a few strokes throughout. So I use that lighter shade to create my shape. And I'll go back in with a shade that's comparable to her hair color, or maybe even a little bit darker, and incorporate a few brush strokes. And that for me makes the most natural and dimensional and believable brow. So for this brow, I'm gonna start with, this is Kevyn Aucoin, dark brunette. My favorite brow products are MAC Spiked, MAC Strut, Anastasia Caramel, Anastasia Soft Brown, Anastasia Dark Brown, and Kevyn Aucoin Dark Brunette. And I did carry Kevyn Aucoin, I think, Soft Brunette at one point, but I think it's really comparable to Soft Brown by Anastasia, so either or is great. So when I'm doing my client's brow, I like to look at what area do I need to address first that'll help me see my client's brow shape. So it may be different for each client. For me, like, my brows are kind of a mess. They're kind of really sparse. And so I like to start in the area that's the most sparse, fill that in, and then see where I need to go next. So Marcia has great brows, but here I can see that I need to kind of bridge this area. And once you bridge that first area, it then becomes easier to see the shape of your client's brow. So your client may have a big gap up here, so it may be easier for you to, you know, fill this in, and then you can kind of see the directionality of where her brow wants to go. So that's how I like to work. Like, where do I need to go first so that I can see what this brow is telling me to do? So I think starting right in here would be great. And I do very short hair-like strokes, almost like dots. Okay, so now that I've addressed this general area, I can see that her shape is pulling me kind of down here. And I'm always brushing throughout, so I'll do a few strokes and then I'll brush it to get those brows going back up into shape, but also to break up some of that pencil. Because ultimately I want this to be convincing. I want this to look like brow and not pencil, you know, not product. as I'm creating my hair strokes, I'm making them in the direction of the hair. So when I'm out here, my brush stroke is out and almost toward her ear, you know, almost toward her hairline. And then when I move up here, they're going straight up because that's the direction the hair is going. Awesome, so I think that shape is great. So now I'm gonna bring in a deeper pencil, which is MAC Spiked. And now I'm just gonna incorporate just a few strokes throughout. Just to give that a bit more dimension. Great. So I'm happy with that shape. So now I'm gonna clean it up just a little bit using the foundation that I used for her highlight. So that Rich Caramel by Black Opal on a concealer brush. This is MAC number 242. So it's just a small concealer brush. And I'm gonna take that right under the brow. And this does a couple things, right? Like it definitely cleans up if your client does happen to have some little babies growing through, which you should have addressed during skin prep, but if you didn't, this does clean that up. But what this does is it creates contrast under the eye. And so that contrast makes your brow look more precise. And it also makes it stand out a bit more. I'm actually going to give her just a little bit of this to clean this up there. And I just use my finger to blend out that foundation. Great. I'm going to take just a little bit of pressed translucent powder, which is my Ket set. The tiniest bit, I'm just going to run that through the brow because again, I hate a wet brow. So I'm gonna give her a little bit of powder. And then my final step is I'm gonna take some clear brow gel and just set those brows up and into place. So this is just MAC clear brow gel. And mine looks a little janky, but that's okay. It means I love it. And I use it every time, so just brush this through the brows. I love a brushed up brow, so I brush the front of my brows up and then everything else out and up. And that is a beautiful brow. So now we're ready to move on to the eyes. And I start under the brow bone. So I use NARS Night Star. This is pretty much a universal, I got this from Sam. This is pretty much a universal under eye highlight, under brow highlight, I should say. And I love it because it has a soft sparkle to it. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's a beautiful beige with a gorgeous sparkle to it. So I love that. And this sets that cream that we just used under the brow, but it also is a beautiful highlight. And this is a 242, a different 242. So I carry quite a few 242s in my kit because I use them for multiple things. So I use them to clean up the brow. I use them to set the underbrow area. I use them to lay down color on the lid. So they get lots of use. So I carry, I think four of them in my kit. Okay. And next, I'm gonna take my Sable, which was my, my bronzing powder. So this is the Fashion Fair Sable. And I'm gonna use this in the crease to define the socket of the crease. And this serves as a beautiful transition color. One thing that I learned when I was studying, makeup, when I first started doing makeup, I would study Danessa's DVDs, and one of the things that she mentioned is this concept of mirroring. And when you mirror, you use the same tone throughout the face in multiple places. So we use this contour shade at the hairline and along the edges of the face. We're also going to bring that warmth into the socket of your client's eye. And this looks super natural because we've already seen this tone elsewhere. I'm also going to take that with a pencil brush, pointed pencil brush. Take a bit of that Sable, look up, and you're going to bring that right under your client's eye on the bottom lash line. Okay, now we could stop there. That's beautiful. That's a gorgeous eye, but of course we're not because I'm dramatic. And we're gonna go there today. So the very next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up a cream eyeshadow. So this is MAC Indian Wood Cream Eyeshadow Pot. This is let me say by the correct name. It's a pro long wear paint pot, and it's called Indian Wood. It's one of my favorites. I love this for bridal. It's just a beautiful champagne gold. I'm gonna take that 242 and I'm gonna lay that down on the mobile lid from lash line to crease. Now I'm really kind of particular in the way that I lay down my colors. I'm very methodical. And so when I'm laying down this cream on the lid, I lay it down in a beautiful semicircle. I'm actually going to switch sides very quickly. And this forms a semicircle from the lash line to the crease. And I do this every time, regardless of the cream that I'm using. It could be a black, it could be a champagne, it can be a bronzy brown or a gold. It's always going to be a neat semicircle because this makes it easier for me to blend it out. So I'm taking a fresh, clean, fluffy blender brush. This is a Hakuhodo. What is this? J5520. It's either 5523 or 5525. I'm sorry, it kind of wiped off, but so I'm gonna take that fluffy blender brush and blend out the edges of that eyeshadow. And because I've laid it down beautifully, it blends out beautifully and effortlessly. I don't have to fight this. I'm intentional about the shapes that I'm creating and the way that I lay things down. So as you're working and you're practicing on your models and your clients, really be intentional about how are you applying things? How are you laying them down? Are you making it easier for yourself? Are you having to then go back and readjust and fight it? So just be more thoughtful in your artistry. So now that that lid color is down, I'm ready to start playing with actual eyeshadows and pigments. So now that I'm ready to work with pigments, this is when I lay down a bit of safety with my loose powder. So I'm taking that YSL, just straight YSL, number 3, Alcone sponge. It's a fresh Alcone, and I'm gonna dip it into my YSL and lay down a bit of safety so that if I do get a bit of fallout, it lands on this loose powder and doesn't corrupt that beautiful foundation that we've laid down. So this is a safety barrier. And I love doing this with YSL as opposed to like Dermablend, because this is more finely milled than Dermablend. And it has a good amount of slip to this. So when I'm ready to wipe this away, it literally just glides off the skin. So this doesn't add any more texture. That's so important, especially when you're working with mature clients. You don't want to be adding texture. That's another reason why I didn't do this earlier. I want to just lay this down just when I'm ready to start working with eyeshadows and not before. So now that I'm ready to start working with eyeshadows, I'm going to lay down that safety and get to work. So the lid color that I'm going to use is this beautiful in light powder. It's a loose powder by Danessa. And the shade that I'm using is in light Aura of Attraction. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. So I'm going to take just a bit of that into the lid of that package. So right into the lid. Picking up a bit of that on my, another one of those fluffy brushes. So the J, what is it, 5523 by Hakuhodo. So just like that. And I'm gonna lay this down. You can close your eye. Can you pull in really close on this? Great. I'm gonna lay this down right on the lid. Right on top of that beautiful cream eyeshadow that we laid down. And this is so beautiful for a wedding, a gala, anything that's going to be in romantic lighting, because this really dances and shimmers in the light. So I love using this for my brides. So that's my lid color. And now I'm gonna go in and start adding dimension and depth and a bit of detail. So my favorite, I use this pretty much 90% of the time on my clients, is the NARS Codora eyeshadow duo, and as you can see, it's a little bit beat up because I use it down. So these shades are so beautiful. And I'm gonna take the darkest shade from this palette. Let's see if we can get that in there. The darkest shade from the palette, which is this one, on a fresh J5523. So I have, I think 6 of these in my kit, and they're like maybe 15 bucks. So I've just collected them over time. They're my favorite. And I'm gonna apply this on the outer third of the lid, but keeping this on the mobile lid, okay? So don't bring it out yet. We're just working right on the lid. We're adding dimension and depth here. And you wanna go from lash line to crease. As much as I love these 2 shades, and I love that they have a bit of sparkle and a bit of shimmer to them, man, do they have a lot of fallout. So you really have to do a good job of tapping off the excess before you bring it up to your client's eye, or you're gonna have, ooh, good luck, girl. So I'm just working that onto the lid. And that's great. You can actually open your eye and look straight. I often work with my clients with their eyes open. That helps me to see where this product is landing and where I want to go ahead and build dimension and how far I want to bring things up. Don't be afraid to, as you work, have your client open, look straight, work around her open eyes. There's nothing worse than having her, you know, keep the eye closed the whole time, and then she opens it and it's like, oh, that's not how I thought that was gonna look. So ask your client to do what you need, okay? So open and look all the way up. And now I'm just working this on that same pointed pencil liner that we used before, and bringing that under the eye. I'm gonna turn you towards me just a little bit. Awesome. So at this point, I'm ready to add a bit of liner, play with some lashes, and then I can go back in and finish out the dimension. So I'm just gonna use MAC. This is Feline. It's just a smudgy, standard black liner. I'm gonna turn you towards me just a bit. Let's see, I wanna make sure that you guys can see this. So I'm actually gonna come to this side. Close. And working this right into the lash line. Nice. So that's down. So I'm going to take a bit of black eyeshadow. This is Natasha Denona, Blackest Black, with a new pointed brush, pointed detailer brush, tapping into just a tiny bit of that black. And I'm going to diffuse this line with my black eyeshadow. So you can go ahead and close. I love a smoky liner, so this is how I create those beautiful smoky looks. I just think this looks so elegant and expensive. I love for my makeup to look expensive. So I very rarely will do a hard line at the lash line, unless I'm doing something very specific. But if I want to get romantic with a look, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get a little bit smoky with that liner. Okay, open. Great. And I'm just going to diffuse that out just a little bit more with that same slate gray from the Cordura palette. And I'm going to go on top of that and just diffuse out the edge of that a little bit more. I'm keeping it thin on the inner corner and bringing it up just a bit higher on the outer corner. Awesome, you can open. Nice. And so now I'm gonna work that bottom lash line. You can open and look up. Taking that Feline pencil by MAC. And I'm working it in the waterline. And under. And then same steps. So taking my Natasha Denona, Blackest Black, and smudging that out a bit. And then bringing that down even further with my NARS, Cordura, great. And now I'm ready for a lash. Today I'm using Eylure. What style is this? Let's see. So I took it out of the package. So it's the Eylure 126. They're kind of a spiky, very wispy lash. And they kind of have a rounded shape. So they're a little bit longer on the center of the lash and shorter on the edges. So I'm gonna take that lash, and I'm a lash girl, so I love a good lash. So I love Eylure. I do love Ardell's. I carry wispies, demi wispies. I carry, a good variety of lashes in my kit. So these are what I'm gonna use for today. And the very first thing that I do, and hold on, let me clip this little baby excess piece on the edge. So the very first thing that I do is I'm gonna have you look down, and I always, always, always measure the lash on my client's eye. So keep looking down for me. I'm gonna switch sides. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, open. Okay, so this needs to be clipped. So I'm taking my little tweezer and just clipping a bit of that excess that was longer than Marcia's eye. So I'm gonna measure it one more time, and I keep clipping and measuring until I get it just right. Oops. Thank you. And look down. Okay, open. And what I'm looking for is I'm making sure that there's a lift here. So the edge of that lash isn't hanging below her, the line that I want to create here. So I want to create a bit of lift to her eye, right? And so I don't want any of that lash to fall below that lifted line. So I'm going to clip just the tiniest bit of this, and then we'll be ready to go. So the adhesive that I've been on and loving lately is the House of Lashes. Their black brush-on adhesive. It's latex free, and I love it because it does a beautiful job of concealing the lash band, so I don't have to go in and do too much. It's very deep and black, and the adhesion the adhesion is amazing on this glue. So I've been loving it for about a month. I've been playing with it for a few weeks now, and it's been great. So I'm just gonna brush on a bit of that adhesive to the lash line. And I'm gonna let that dry for just a few seconds. And while that's doing its thing, I can go ahead and dust away, because I'm pretty happy with this eye so far. So I'm gonna go ahead and dust away this excess powder, my safety that I laid down. So dusting that away. And now I think that lash is ready to go. So I'm gonna come on this side because I think that'll be a little bit easier for you guys to see. And I do use a tweezer or applicator tool to do my lashes. And what I like to do is I will have my client look down towards her knees, and I attach the inner corner first, make sure that it's on there. And then I attach the rest of the lash. So starting from that inner corner and working my way out. And as that adhesive starts to settle and dry, I just go ahead and tweak and push up the lash so it dries going upward. Okay, open. Okay, great. Okay, so at this point, you can decide if you want to add any more depth or warmth to this eye, if you want to define the crease anymore. I'm pretty happy with this. So I may do just a couple more touches, maybe add just a little bit of warmth to the crease. So I'm going to take my eyeshadow palette, which has just a variety of neutrals in it. I built this myself. So and I'm just going to tap some warm reddish browns onto one of these guys. So just a pointed crease brush. And I'm gonna build just a bit of that warmth right into the crease. I'm happy with that. And now I want to finish the bottom of the eye and also blend out the top of the eye. So there needs to be a little bit more fade here. So I'm gonna take a smaller fluffy brush, and this one's a Hakuhodo J146, I believe. So it's just a smaller fluffy brush. I'm gonna take that lighter color from the Cordura palette. So there's that lighter mid-tone brown. And I'm gonna come back on this side and look up. And I'm just going to add a bit of that under the eye so that this fades out to nothing. I want this to be as soft and diffuse as possible. So I use that soft brown from the Cordura to do just that. And I take just a bit of that and look down and diffuse out the top. Great. So I am pretty happy with this. So I'm just gonna add some mascara. I'm not a mascara snob. So I just use Great Lash Old Faithful with a mascara wand. And I'm gonna have my client look down. And I concentrate this at the base of the lash just to marry her natural lashes with the falsie. Okay, so I don't really run the mascara all the way through the lashes because I want to maintain the integrity of the shape of the lash. But I do want this to look natural, so look straight for me. So she's getting the most mascara at the base of her lashes. And then look up. I'm gonna run just a little of this on her bottom lashes. Great. So from here, now we're just doing the bells and the whistles. I'm gonna come in here with a bit of blush. My favorite is the Ben Nye. This is actually the Fashion Rouge palette, but I customized it a little bit. So the Fashion Rouge was just a little bit softer than what I like. So I added a couple bright, bold colors. So I added 3 of the individual shades to the Fashion Rouge, and I have a palette that I can pretty much use universally. So I'm probably gonna go in with some of these like mid-tone and soft pinks, just a mixture of the pinks. And I am using a fan brush for this. So this is another Hakuhodo. This is J4004, and I'm gonna have Marcia smile, and I'm gonna run this blush right across the cheeks. So I'm just using this guy and this guy mixed together. So a peachy pink and a mid-tone pink. This is almost like a blue-based pink. And brushing it right across the apples of her cheeks with my fan brush. And then I'm gonna give her a little bit of this at the hairline. Again, that mirroring concept. So using the same tone multiple times throughout the face. And that gives a bit of continuity and consistency.
My eye's watering.
Uh-oh, which one?
For some reason, this one and stuff. Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know why.
It happens. Okay, and then I'm gonna add just a bit of a different blush. This is MAC Breezy. I'm gonna add just a bit of that. It's a rosy pink. Give a little bit more of that over here too. Awesome. And now we're gonna add a bit of glow. And so I'm using Bobbi Brown. This is her Shimmer Brick in Bronze. So I'm gonna have you smile and turn your face this way. Beautiful. And I'm just placing that right on the high point of the cheek. A bit of that under the brow bone. Maybe just a tiny bit of that right on the hot spot on the forehead. It happens. Okay, I'm gonna turn your face that way. Perfect. Okay. And I love just giving just a hair of that right there, right where the light naturally hits. Gorgeous. And if you really want to go there with the glow, you can add just a bit of that Danessa highlighter, the In Light powder, the same one that we used on the lid. Just right on the high points of the cheek. That highlighter is super pigmented, so you don't need a ton. Beautiful. And so the last thing I'm gonna do is the lip. And so I'm gonna keep this pretty soft and muted. I'm not gonna do anything too crazy. And this is feeling very bridal for me. And so I'll typically do a soft peachy pink lip for a bridal look. So I'm gonna go in with a brown lip liner. I'm leaning towards either MAC Chestnut or MAC Cork. We'll see which one works better on her skin tone. So I'm gonna test out Cork first. see what that gets us. And I may do a combination of both. So I'm gonna come on this side so you guys can see. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna build a bit of that chestnut right around the very edges of the lip. Just to give it even more dimension. And I'm just diffusing this down. It's great. So I love my Visar, what is this, Muse Nudes lip palette. It's my absolute favorite for bridal. I can pretty much do everything I need with just this one palette. So I'm gonna do a custom mix of the peaches and the pinks from this palette to create a soft bridal look for her. So I'm gonna scoop out, and I'm pulling from this peachy orangey tone and this like mid-tone pink. I'm gonna scoop out enough to get this lip done. And I'm doing a custom mix of those two colors. So I'm gonna start at the center of the lip. This is a MAC lip brush. Starting in the center and now building down into that brown lip liner. Okay, press your lips together. And press one more time. Okay, press. Now I'm gonna add just a little bit of gloss on top of that. I'm a gloss girl, so I love a glossy finish to a lip. So I'm actually gonna use, and this is I think a limited edition. It's from the Mariah Carey from MAC collection, and this is called It's Just Like Honey. So it's a beautiful beigey sheer lip gloss with a golden fleck to it. So I'm gonna take a bit of that. And I'm gonna apply that right to the center of the lip. Okay, press. And press one last time. That looks awesome. And now I'm just gonna refine it. My lip pencils. Awesome. So that is pretty much the look. I love it. This is like a go-to signature bridal look for me. And it is glowy, has lots of dimension. It's soft, it's natural but glam, very glam. The final thing that I like to do is I love to address my client's skin, right? Her chest, her collarbones. And so I am gonna add a bit of glow to those areas. And so I'm gonna use that same in light powder and give her just a little bit of glow right on the collarbones and on the high points of the shoulders. That is beautiful. And then the final thing that I want to show you guys is one of my little tricks that I love to do if I want to elevate a look for a bride in between her ceremony or reception. One of the things that I love to do is add even more shimmer to the eyes, because when I think of a reception, I'm thinking warm, romantic, candlelit, and I love for my brides to be the centerpiece of that wedding. And so one of my secret weapons is the Chanel. It's a glitter paint pot. I hate loose glitter, but I love this one. And it's called, I actually have two. So I carry New Moon, which is a coppery shimmer. And then I carry another one, and that one's called Phantasm, F-A-N-T-A-S-M-E, Phantasm maybe, and it's more of a silvery, like a snowy shimmer. And so sometimes I layer them, so I'm gonna see what that does for us now. But if you can kind of zoom in close to the eyes, I wanna make sure that we can really see this. So you can close your eye, and I just, with my finger, I pick up a bit of this shimmer, and right on the lid, I tap it on with my finger. Because every bride deserves just a little bit of Chanel on her wedding day. So this is my little touch of Chanel that I give her, so you can open. And that's a beautiful, beautiful shimmer that we can just pop on in a few seconds right before her reception. Close one more time. And then you can layer that. So you can start with the New Moon, which is the coppery shimmer. And then you can go in with the Phantasm or Phantasme, and then right on the center, add a bit of that kind of white shimmer. So it almost looks like a hot spot right in the center of the eye. So open. So that is so beautiful, and it really dances in the light. Can you guys see that eye? Gorgeous. And you can go ahead and turn your head from side to side so they can see the effect that gives. It's beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that right on the other eye as well. I'm gonna hop over. Okay, close. I have to give a major shout out to my mentor Sonia for putting these on the map for me, because I was like, I love shimmer, but I cannot stand loose glitters, and so she put me onto these, so they've been a game changer. And so that was the first one, which is the more coppery shimmer, and then the second one is the white shimmer. So you can layer just like that. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. You can close. I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of deepen this liner. So this is when you can have a little bit more fun. Love it. All right, you guys. So this is the look. I'm gonna hop across. Yes. Love it. Give them a little shoulder so they can see the that beautiful shoulder action. Yes. Love it. All right, so you guys, so fire off your questions. What I'm gonna do is pan in one final time really tight on the face. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hop off, let these guys go, and then I'll hop back on screen, answer your questions, and then hop into our branding tips, because now we have the routine, we have the technique, but now I'm gonna teach you my secret formula to how you can make money from this. You need the skill set, but what's just as important is the branding, the marketing. You have to find your client. And so I'm gonna walk you through step by step what that looks like. Thank you guys. I'll be back in just a sec.